Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Patricia Mosquera Calle, and I am the Deputy Chief of UNDRR Asia Pacific. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this World Tsunami Awareness Day event. Organized by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, and the UN Development Program. The theme for this year is World Tsunami Awareness Day is around international cooperation, in line with Target F of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. Tsunamis can have devastating and long-lasting impacts on affected populations, and no region has been impacted more by tsunamis than Asia Pacific. Given the transboundary nature of tsunamis, international cooperation is critical to saving lives, especially for developing countries. What we hope today is share with you some examples of UN initiatives and programs that are helping countries build resilience against tsunamis, all thanks to international cooperation. Before we start, I would like to note that all attendees are muted by default. Our event will not have questions and answers, but you are free to leave your thoughts and comments in the chat box. Also, please note that this event is being recorded and has closed captioning if you wish to enable it. With that said, I would like to introduce now a video message from Mrs. Mami Mitsutori, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction and the head of UNDRR.
This year's World Tsunami Awareness Day on 5 November promises to be special. It is an occasion to celebrate a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reduce tsunami risk around the world. However rare they might be, tsunamis are the single most deadly of all sudden-onset natural hazards. Millions of people live and work in tsunami-exposed communities across the world's oceans. After 5 years of marking this day in many unique ways, this year we can announce a major new development. The UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development has the potential to fill capability gaps to speed up the detection and warning for tsunamis even from the near instant that they form. The UNESCO IOC Assembly of UN member states has approved the establishment of the Ocean Decade Tsunami Program and a scientific committee to draft a 10-year research, development, and implementation plan for this program. This will be fully supported by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UN agencies, civil protection agencies, and others. In a major boost to international cooperation to developing countries and small island developing states, the Tsunami Program will contribute to the safe ocean outcome of the Ocean Decade by making all communities at risk of tsunami prepared and resilient by 2030. Scaling up the Tsunami Ready program is testament to what focused international cooperation can deliver and will make a significant contribution to reducing risk and saving lives. Only together can we achieve this ambition.
Next, we will be hearing from Mrs. Armida Ali-Shabana, UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of ESCAP.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. We meet today to observe the 2021 World Tsunami Awareness Day. The General Assembly designated 5 November for countries, international bodies, and civil society to continuously raise awareness about tsunami and share innovative approaches to risk reduction. Much has been achieved since the 24 Indian Ocean tsunami that killed more than 250,000 lives in over 10 countries and exposed the lack of early warning system and disaster preparedness. The establishment of the ESCAP Multi-Donor Trust Fund 1 year later represented a significant milestone towards a collective regional effort to address these unmet needs. In line with this year's theme for the International Day for Disaster Reduction, which is around Target F of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, to substantially enhance international cooperation to developing countries, the Trust Fund has deepened and extended regional cooperation mechanism and partnership. Over the past 15 years, it has continuously strengthened early warning system for the benefit of high-risk and low-capacity countries in the Indian and Pacific Ocean basins, particularly addressing transboundary hazards. Today, the Trust Fund continues to provide financial and technical support to address gaps and unmet needs in the region's early warning systems. As the only dedicated regional trust fund that delivers coordinated support in the development of multi-hazard early warning systems, it has achieved significant results by promoting innovative pilot initiatives, scaling up early warning systems, and facilitating cooperation among countries. Continued engagement and commitment of member states will be essential to ensuring regional progress towards enhancing tsunami resilience. Today's event will highlight examples of successful cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region around building preparedness and resilience to tsunamis. In emphasizing the importance of regional cooperation and partnerships to tackle the challenges posed by disasters, I would like to thank UNDRR, UNDP, IOC, UNESCO, and all partners for our continued collaboration. Thank you very much.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the Regional Chief of UNDRR Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, Mr. Marco Toscano Ribalta, for his opening remarks. Marco, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Diana Patricia. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this commemoration of the World Tsunami Awareness Day. UNDRR is really glad to be co-organizing this event with ESCAP, IOC, UNESCO, and UNDP, and we are really honored to have with us His Excellency Mr. Jon Ostrom Grondal, Ambassador of Sweden to Thailand, His Excellency Mr. Yuichi Oba, Japan's permanent representative to ESCAP and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassies of Japan in Thailand, and His Excellency Dr. Renato Solidum, Undersecretary of Officer in charge of the Philippines Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. As the most disaster-prone region in the world, Asia-Pacific has suffered from impact of some of the worst recorded disasters in history. However, out of those disasters rose some of the best examples of cooperation to reduce disaster risk. Nowhere is this better captured than in the response to threat posed by tsunamis. While rare indeed, as we have heard, tsunamis remains the deadliest of all sudden onset natural hazards. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami, and the 2018 Sulawesi tsunami in Indonesia are some of the examples of how tsunamis can devastate entire cities and, most fundamentally, people's life and livelihood in an instant. Today, you will be hearing from my UN colleagues about how they have operationalized international cooperations into programs and initiatives to help communities and people better understand, prepare, and respond to tsunamis. However, these efforts would have not been possible without the support and backing of countries like Sweden and Japan, who generously contributed funding and expertise to help developing countries enhance their resilience. That is why the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction set the increasing of such support as a standalone target, Target F. It is about helping disaster-prone countries take measures that protect their most vulnerable from the impact of disasters. Without such international cooperation, the least developed countries risk seeing their development gains wiped away by disasters, thus pushing them further into poverty and weakening their chances of graduation to middle-income status. And for small island developing states, it becomes a matter of survival altogether. As global warming rises sea levels, so does it increase the destructiveness and reach of tsunamis. Already, sea levels are rising at double rate of 30 years ago. The scale of the Indian Ocean tsunami triggered one of the world's largest coordinated disaster relief efforts and changed the way the international community viewed disasters and most fundamentally prevention and disaster risk reductions. It also boosted the development of early warning systems and the need for them to be end-to-end and inclusive. Indeed, there is no just nor effective disaster risk reduction without inclusivity. We should continue to build out of the legacy of cooperation to reduce risk before they become disasters. This includes raising climate ambitions at COP26 to avert further climate disasters and dramatically scale up financing for climate change adaptations, resilience, and disaster risk reduction. On this World Tsunami Awareness Day, let us commit to taking international cooperation to the next level, because only together can we make true progress toward a safer and more resilient world. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Marco. Our next speaker is Mr. Rick Bailey, the head of the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System Secretariat under IOC UNESCO. Mr. Bailey, welcome. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to talk to you today about all the terrific regional cooperation that's happened in the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning Mitigation System and the IOC Tsunami Ready program. I'll just share my screen. Okay, I hope you can see that now.
Yes, we can see. Maybe you want to put it in mode, presentation mode?
Yep, here we go. There we go.
Great.
Technology.
Perfect now.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity to talk today. As we all know, and as we heard then, 26th of December 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami changed the lives of many. Sadly, more than 230,000, it's estimated, people lost their lives. Thousands more were listed as missing. More than 1 million people were displaced and homeless. The Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System begins to be developed. In 2005, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO was given the mandate by the United Nations to establish the system. 25 countries around the Indian Ocean became member states of the system. Early on, 2005, the member states go to work, working together through regional cooperation to develop the new system. The fight against the common tsunami threat unites the countries together. In the interim, though, as a mark of Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean cooperation, the USA and Japan provided an interim alert system for the Indian Ocean, the IAS. And that was based on their skills and experience that they'd gathered by running a similar system in the Pacific since 1965 under the auspices of UNESCO, IOC as well. Finally, after a lot of work, the system is fully implemented. In 2011, it becomes operational. There's 2 years of dual operation with the interim system to demonstrate its new extensive capability. And then finally, the new system becomes fully operational. The system's built on 3 pillars, like most tsunami warning mitigation systems are: risk assessment, tsunami detection, warning and dissemination, and community awareness and preparedness. Risk assessment. This is really the first step to scientifically assess the tsunami hazard and the potential risk. This is important from our government, from our disaster managers, from our communities to understand what the hazard is. A lot of effort went into this and several iterations for the Indian Ocean, and it continues today as we learn more about the hazard itself. The other, of course, important pillar is tsunami detection, warning and dissemination. First of all, though, a warning system absolutely depends on seismic and sea level data to be exchanged between all countries freely and instantly. One country alone can't monitor the whole Indian Ocean. But then, as part of the system, this information is used by what we term tsunami service providers. And in the Indian Ocean, there are 3 of them: Australia, India, and Indonesia. And they provide tsunami threat information now to national tsunami warning centres that have been established in each of those 25 member states I mentioned before. Then it's the sovereign responsibility of these national tsunami warning centres to determine the threat, examine the threat, and disseminate national warnings to their at-risk communities. But of course, no warning system is effective if the communities who it's trying to protect don't know what to do when a warning is disseminated. So a lot of work has to go into community awareness and preparedness once we've identified those communities at risk. This includes exercise and drills to remind the communities what actions to take. We're fortunate that tsunamis don't happen very often, but it's unfortunate when they do, the consequences are large. And so maintaining that awareness is a challenge for any tsunami warning system. But as part of that, the Intergovernmental Coordination Group for the Indian Ocean System conducts what we call IOWAVE exercises every 2 years for all member states to come together, practice the upstream, and where possible, the downstream parts of their national tsunami warning systems. Now, I mentioned before the Tsunami Ready program. This is something IOC UNESCO has introduced. It's a key platform moving forward to helping make these communities at risk what we call ready. We can't guarantee you'll be safe. Tsunamis are the most dangerous things, but what we can do, and we must all work towards, is preparing those at-risk communities to be ready when the next tsunami threat happens and to maintain that readiness. So under this program, there are 12 indicators that are developed. There's training goes into particular countries and down to communities about how to implement and test these indicators. That then gives them access to being certified by the IOC UNESCO as being a tsunami ready community. This is the big move forward now, particularly in the tsunami program, as we heard before, under the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, as I mentioned before. The most relevant outcome under this program is, of course, the Safe Oceans outcome, which, like all the outcomes, support sustainable development goals. As was also mentioned, this includes a science plan now. What difference are we going to make over the 10 years? We have warning systems, but our decision makers, our communities, we always, and even the scientists, we want lower uncertainties, quicker warnings to help our communities. A tsunami can arrive in as little as 20 minutes. Even crossing the whole ocean basin is 8 hours. That is still not very long to evacuate whole communities, as our emergency managers will convey to us. So one of the things is what new technologies and observational advances can we do to reduce that uncertainty when our decision makers, our communities need a warning. And as part of that, as I mentioned before, communities got to be ready. So the big aim is to strive for 100% of those communities that have been determined under the risk assessment as being at-risk coastlines to be tsunami ready. A further example of regional cooperation is a UNESCAP project that's been funded since 2019. It's about strengthening tsunami early warning in the Northwest Indian Ocean through, of course, regional cooperation. There are 5 countries involved: India, Pakistan, Oman, the United Arab Emirates. And the whole idea is bringing these countries all together. They're all working together. They have their own expertise. We're bringing in international expertise. It's all about regional cooperation. It's all about working stronger together against, again, the common threat, which is the tsunamis. So again, it's building those pillars for the countries, determining the risk, building tsunami warning chains, which can be used for all sorts of hazards. The whole process about getting stakeholders together across the country, from national to provincial to local, all engaged, all aware of what the threat is, and working together to make sure those tsunami warning chains get to the vulnerable people. Then it's about developing the inundation evacuation maps. How are the communities going to escape from this threat? And the ultimate goal is to make sure all those communities at risk are tsunami ready. And already the outcomes from this project are benefiting all the other member states. We continue to learn from each other, from the experts to the people being trained. It's a two-way process, and it's through that regional cooperation that we reach these successes. And now we've got a short video of about this particular project. So thank you. If we could have the video.
To enable better understanding of tsunami hazards in the Macron subduction zone, The Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO is implementing a multinational project aimed at strengthening tsunami early warning in the Northwest Indian Ocean region through regional cooperation.
Oman is one of the countries that might be affected. In fact, it has been affected in 1945 from an earthquake in this subduction zone, and about 4,000 people were reported dead in Pakistan of that tsunami. Luckily in Oman, we were fortunate enough that no casualties were reported. This project will strengthen the cooperation between member countries to discuss the Makran subduction zone, which is scientifically still not very well understood.
That the subduction zone here, that's the area which generate big earthquake, is very, very poorly known. Therefore, we decided to run some seismic profiles, which was really happened in 3 profiles we run in the Sistan and Balochistan region. And the whole plan was that to be able to cover the Iran and the Gulf, the Oman Gulf, and also Oman at the same time. But because from scientific point of view, I mean, that was feasible and possible, but at the same time, it was very difficult to conduct it. Therefore, what happened that we did do some survey to be able to understand the parameters. That is very important. We know the parameters for modeling, and the modeling is very important to be able to estimate if an earthquake happened, and also after that a tsunami happened. Then what happens that after that will be kind of using that for to be able to understand what's really happening and what is the main part that we have to take care of.
This high-level conference focuses on tsunamis in the Makran region and discusses national strategies for tsunami early warning in the area.
This conference is being conducted as part of a project that IOC UNESCO has secured from UNESCAP Trust Fund on Climate and Disaster Preparedness. So this project is entitled Strengthening Tsunami Early Warning in the Northwest Indian Ocean through Regional Cooperation. And this conference here, which is being hosted by the DGMET PACA, will address some of those issues in our understanding of the hazard, and then how we need to improve our warning chains to address the near-field tsunami threat.
The new strategies is trying to develop the understanding about the warning chain, how actually we can make the warning becomes much better. Second is to look into the standard operating procedures that is already established, and trying to look into how actually this to revise the standard operating procedures to be able to respond to tsunami that happens near field, that can actually hits the wave, hits the coastal within minutes.
It is worth mentioning that the participants at the event include representatives of tsunami warning centers, disaster management agencies, seismologists, and tsunami modelers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. I think you have some final comments, right?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say how much a pleasure it's been working with all my colleagues in the Indian Ocean since 2005. It's like I said, the common threat brings us all together, and the collaboration and working together. There's more work to be done. It's never finished. We always want to improve it, and the threat is always there, and particularly getting our communities now tsunami ready is the next goal. But thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much. And I cannot help to show you my tsunami ready cap that is always with
excellent
me.
Excellent.
And so familiar faces and so familiar work that you're describing. And I think it's important to comment all the cooperation among the intergovernmental coordination groups, how this exchange of experiences is also important for the global tsunami community.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Jaco Siliers, manager of the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub, who will be speaking about UNDP's regional initiative to strengthen school preparedness for tsunamis. Mr. Siliers, welcome. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you very much, colleagues, also for this wonderful opportunity. On behalf of the United Nations Development Programme, I'm really honored to be speaking at this very important day, obviously, on World Tsunami Awareness. UNDP has been a proud partner and a co-organizer together with the government and the people of Japan, UNDRR, ESCAP, and IOC. UNESCO on similar events over the last Japan and Sweden for their support to the UN system and for the work that they have provided in supporting this important initiatives. As we witness the unfolding in discussions of around COP26, I hope that we can also galvanize international cooperation in line with the World Tsunami Awareness Day to make every effort to build resilience and reduce the risk of extreme climate and catastrophic disaster events. Since 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami, UNDP has been working with the international and technical partners in setting up end-to-end early warning systems and implementing community-based disaster risk management programs that aim to enhance awareness and preparedness. The 2004 tsunami was a turning point for many of us in the working in the field of disaster preparedness and risk reduction. One of our core strengths at UNDP is the work we do to better prepare, respond, mitigate, and recover so that we can reduce the number of lives lost from natural hazards. Our work on tsunami early warning and preparedness since 2004 is especially noteworthy. UNDP supported the development of the regional tsunami early warning system for 28 Indian Ocean countries in collaboration with UNESCO's Intergovernmental Ocean Commission, who we just heard from. We helped to develop regional standard operating procedures and supported the organization of the Indian Ocean-wide drill, but also local level tsunami drills and a range of tsunami awareness activities. We also led the development of a methodology for tsunami risk assessment and trained the 28 tsunami-prone countries. The methodology was published in partnership with UNESCO and adapted a few years ago to the context of Indonesia and Sri Lanka, providing a valuable resource even today. We want to thank the government and the people of Japan for recognizing UNDP's role in tsunami preparedness and awareness since 2017. We have been implementing a regional initiative aimed at strengthening school tsunami preparedness, which I'm going to tell you just very briefly about 5 very interesting points. And I also want to share why this is really important as we move forward and continue to focus on preparedness. To date, over 150,000 students, teachers, and school administration officials have been participating in tsunami preparedness. This includes over 350 schools in 23 countries. And it's been done through training of teachers, working with key ministries at national and subnational levels, as well as making efforts to include tsunami preparedness in school curriculum, as well as for governments to recognize tsunami drills in special days like today. This has not been easy, but we are convinced of the importance of scaling up and institutionalizing for the following reasons. First, in identifying tsunami-prone schools, we were overwhelmed to find just how many everywhere in this region are located in tsunami risk areas. For example, in Indonesia alone, over 3,500 schools are at the risk of tsunamis in the country. And relocating and structural measures may be ideal, but it's not always practical and feasible to implement. In fact, for these schools, there are no other options to invest in preparedness and to help their teachers also become better prepared. Second, at the risk of sounding cliche, children are really our agents for change. By focusing on schools, we are focusing on children and young people who are most likely to share what they learn with their families and peers. By teaching and empowering children, we are influencing future generations to become agents of change. Third, we have established partnerships at various levels to achieve this. And we also use technical agencies such as the Tohoku University and IOC UNESCO, who have decades-long experience and knowledge of working on this tsunami-prone schools and how to better update them with global standards. Fourth, in each country and location, we've also ensured that the global good practices are adapted to suit the local context and be locally available in local languages, many of the documents and distribution of the school curriculum. Fifth, the impact of the global pandemic on schools in the past 1 year has been significant, drawing our attention to redesign the approach and tsunami awareness. Earlier this year, we co-created the third phase of this project, also with our country officers, to educate and train teachers and students to respond effectively from these tsunamis. Because we also have to take into consideration now that many of the schools are closed and kids are actually back at home and getting education back at home. So how do you incorporate the whole system, and the changes that have also been brought about by the COVID situation is very important. As we mark the World Tsunami Awareness Day, I'm delighted therefore to share with you also a children's book that we will launch and publish, that have been published and that we will launch today, based on the life of a tsunami survivor from the Solomon Islands. The book is the first of a series that will be published over the next year, inspired by real-life stories from tsunami project countries that we are working in. And it also speaks to the realities of young children and the effects these things have had on their lives. Our first story is a digital form, and it will be downloadable from the UNDP website. As I close, I'm also delighted to share with you a brief video that captures some of this work and the dynamic of the partnerships that we've been engaged with and that we've already heard from everybody here. I think all of us in this partnership have committed to communities in this region to be better prepared and respond to future tsunamis. Let me please start and share this very brief video with you.
My name is Hoa. My name is Norman Itaku.
My name is Niputu Ledia.
My name is Fengawyai.
My name is Cindy Puamau.
My name is Muhammad Liad Ishaq.
I know that a tsunami comes from the sea. It is huge. It comes with force. I am afraid that the tsunami will come and wash me away and I will die.
A tsunami is a natural disaster. It happens after an earthquake. A tsunami with a height of 6 to 7 meters can collapse many houses.
When I look at the ocean, the view is nice, but sometimes I think it's scary. I hear tsunamis are big.
For me, a tsunami looks like a monster. It destroys everything.
All of a sudden, the earthquake occurred. It was very strong, and I felt afraid as I was a small boy back then. I fell to the ground, and I just stayed there waiting until the earthquake stopped. Some people who were at the beach were caught up in the waves, and they drowned on that morning. I felt scared and sad at the same time. I felt lost.
My grandma and my niece are dead. In my family, there are 9. There are 9 members of my family that are dying in that natural disaster. My whole village, there are 50 people. They are dying.
The first step is to stay calm. Take your bag and go underneath the table to protect yourselves from glass, material, and wood. When things have calmed down, we get out with our partners.
As soon as we got the alert, the whole class gathered. We assembled in lines and walked to higher ground.
They taught us to feel it, hear it, run up to the hill for safety from natural disaster like tsunami, especially tsunami.
Now, after the drill has been conducted, we know that working together as a team to reach a safe area will keep everyone safe. I will use the information I learned during the tsunami drill, and I will try to share that information with people that are unaware.
When I grow up to be an adult, I will teach my kids what to do and how to be safe when a tsunami comes.
Prayer is important, but so is being cautious. We also need to have drills to protect ourselves.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cillier. I don't think it's cliche to repeat that children are the future. And at the risk of sounding cliche, I think disasters happen at the local level. So thank you very much for sharing these experiences and for continue capturing the experiences of the persons that were affected by tsunamis, which is very important to keep memory on these events that are very rare. Thank you again. Up next, we have Mrs. Tiziana Bonapace, who serves as the director of the ICT and Disaster Risk Reduction Division in ESCAP. Among their responsibilities is the management of the ESCAP Tsunami Trust Fund. Mrs. Bonapace, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Could I ask for my presentation to be uploaded? Okay, so thank you, Diana, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me today to present to you a few perspectives on our work related to the ESCAP Multi-Donor Trust Fund for Tsunami Disaster and Climate Preparedness. And I think the presentation that Rick Bailey gave 10 minutes or so ago mentioned the trust fund, and Rick gave, I think, very pertinent concrete examples of some of the results that are being delivered under this trust fund. Next, please. So my first slide is really just a map of the riskscape of Asia Pacific. So Asia Pacific, as we know, has many shared disaster risks, and it's the most disaster impacted region in the world. It's also the region where risk is outpacing resilience. And there on the tsunami, the seismic risk landscape, you see how tsunami, earthquakes, and landslides are very prominent along the very long coastline of the region. Next, please. So in 2005, after the devastating 2004 tsunami, the trust fund was established with the objective of providing financial support for end-to-end early warning systems, focusing primarily on coastal hazards in the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asian countries. And up to today, the trust fund is the only dedicated regional funding mechanism that delivers coordinated support for the development of multi-hazard early warning systems. Next, please. Over the almost 2 decades of the fund's implementation, you see the project volumes by country. So mostly countries in Southeast Asia, but also South Asia and Southwest Asia and the Pacific. And then in terms of the allocations by the early warning subsystems, by far the biggest proportion goes to the monitoring And then there is also risk awareness and assessment and response, followed by communications. Next, please. One of the key results or outcomes of the Trust Fund was the establishment of RIMES, the Regional Integrated Multi-Hazard Early Warning System for Africa and Asia. Started off with a membership of 3 countries and has now greatly expanded, as you can see from the slides. Next, please. Then this comes back to the presentation by Rick. Projects on near-field tsunamis, due to the very short response time for evacuation, there is an accentuated and urgent need for awareness raising. And so I will move on because Rick covered this in depth. Next, please. In 2010, the Trust Fund expanded its mandate. It took on a multi-hazard early warning approach. And so from tsunamis, it expanded to include other disasters, notably those related to the climate emergency and the need for climate preparedness and adaptation. Next, please. In 2011, the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System was established with interventions at the regional, national, and local levels, and the Trust Fund was one of the modalities or mechanisms that helped support the establishment of the IOTWMS. Next, please. In 2015, the geographic scope of the Trust Fund was expanded from Southeast Asia, from the Indian Ocean Rim countries, to include the small island developing states in the Southwestern Pacific. There was a need for strengthened weather and climate resilience by building capacity for impact forecasting and climate applications, and multi-hazard seasonal forums were established in Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and Samoa with support from the Trust Fund. Next, please. Then more recently, in 2019 and 2020, the new strategy note was adopted for the Trust Fund, and the Trust Fund now has adopted a programmatic approach that consists of a thematic focus on strengthening people-centered, multi-hazard early warning systems, and a second thematic focus is on strengthening social and economic resilience in Asia Pacific. And then the modes of implementation is one through regional cooperation, and the second mode of implementation is by mainstreaming science, technology, and innovation. Next, please. Thank you. So that is the end of the presentation. And I would also like to just briefly mention that the Trust Fund was established with a contribution of $10 million in 2005 from Thailand. And then it was followed by Sweden and a number of other donors, which included Germany, and then followed by India, and more recently Switzerland, and this year Italy joined as the newest donor to the Trust Fund. So I'd like to sincerely express our deep appreciation to all the donor members of the Trust Fund. Without your support, the trust fund would not exist. If the trust fund didn't exist, I am very sure we would have to reinvent it, because it's not about whether a tsunami will occur, whether a disaster will occur, but when will a disaster occur. And so preparedness and resilience, these are unfortunately on the needs of our present, and they will be ever growing needs of the future as we all struggle to find the balance between being prepared and ensuring that we build our resilience to future extreme events. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bonaparte, for sharing this emblematic example of international cooperation through the Multi-Donor Trust Fund. Now that we have heard about all this great work being done at the regional level, we would like to focus on the perspective of a country that is in the midst of tackling the challenges of tsunamis. For that, we are pleased to have with us Dr. Renato Solidum, Junior Undersecretary of the Department of Science and Technology and Officer in charge of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. Dr. Solidum, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good day. The Philippines joins countries and organizations all over the world in commemorating the 2021 World Tsunami Awareness Day. After the UN General Assembly declared November 5 as the World Tsunami Awareness Day, the Philippines, led by the Department of Science and Technology, Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or DOST-PHIVOLS, has observed the World Tsunami Awareness Day since 2016 through the conduct of exhibitions and tsunami seminars in schools and towns, and holding online digital poster-making contests for students, webinars for the public, and micro, small, and medium enterprises, and media briefing during the pandemic. The Philippines, being an archipelago and a seismologically prone area, bounded by trenches along its margins, is highly prone to tsunamis. Based on PHIVOL's hazard mapping efforts, around 14 million people live in coastal areas of the Philippines that can be inundated by tsunamis. This high exposure highlights the need to prepare our communities to be ready for tsunamis by developing an end-to-end early warning system that involves international and national organizations, local governments, and coastal communities focused on monitoring and warning, hazards and risk assessment, and effective and efficient actions that reduce the risks through mitigation and preparedness for appropriate response. Our efforts have been hastened by the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami event, which devastated some of our neighboring countries. And thanks to international collaboration, we have made significant progress. Allow me to recognize some of these. The government of Japan has extended comprehensive support in enhancing PHIVOL's earthquake monitoring system, starting with upgrade to digital sensors in the late 1990s to early 2000s, and again in 2010 to 2018 through provision of additional broadband instruments and its tsunami monitoring system, which resulted to the installation of 19 sea level stations around the country and the setting up of 30,000 tsunami scenario database. The evaluation of the Pacific Tsunami Warning System through Pacific-wide exercises, an initiative led by UNESCO IOC, starting in 2006, has enabled PHIVOL's as the Philippines Tsunami Warning Center and the Office of Civil Defense to test their readiness to receive and provide downstream warning or advisory products and evaluate preparedness of coastal communities. In 2008 to 2009, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, International Tsunami Information Center, and UNESCO IOC collaborated with PHIVOL's on the development of tsunami standard operating procedures in the Philippines. The workshop set in motion the conduct of end-to-end tsunami exercises involving several government offices and the media to see how the warning center and disaster management organizations will respond in case of a tsunami threat to the Philippines. This collaboration has likewise led to the improvement of PHIVOL's internal processes for monitoring, warning, and communication. With the expertise and experience, PHIVOLCS became part of the UNESCO IOC team that conducted standard operating procedures capacity building for Vietnam. After the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, the establishment of the ESCAP Multi-Donor Trust Fund has supported the establishment of the Regional Integrated and Multi-Hazard Early Warning System for Africa and Asia, or RIMES, which facilitated the setup of a seismic station and 2 sea level monitoring stations in Luzon Island. We were also happy to share our technical expertise to RIMES during its initial operation by seconding PHIVOLCS expert seismologists to assist in the development of RIMES earthquake monitoring systems and procedures. PHIVOLCS tsunami modeling hazards and risk assessment activities have also benefited from international training workshops and collaborative projects with various international organizations. Since then, we have developed ICT platforms and web and mobile-based applications that are now widely used all over the country to assess hazards quickly and easily, gather exposure data, and quantitatively estimate the potential impacts of earthquakes and tsunamis. Crucial to tsunami preparedness is an informed community. PHIVOLCS has developed and implemented tsunami awareness and preparedness tools based in the Philippine setting. We continue to improve these tools through co-development of materials or adopting appropriate materials from international partners. For example, our participation with UNESCO UNESCAP project in 2010 to 2011 enabled us and 3 other Southeast Asian countries to exchange information materials and adopt appropriate materials for earthquake and tsunami awareness and preparedness. As a result of a collaborative study with Japanese institutions on the impact of a 2011 Great East Japan earthquake in the Tohoku region, we have produced 4 comics or manga on the stories of Filipino survivors of the event, and this is widely used in schools. We also have partnered with UNDP in the conduct of tsunami drills in schools in coastal communities in central eastern seaboard of the country. We need to continuously work together as a whole of society towards developing tsunami-ready communities that likewise need to be resilient to other threats, including climate change and COVID-19. Building tsunami-ready communities in the new normal is challenging, but as we have seen, key in this effort is partnership. In this regard, our sincerest gratitude is given to our internal national partners who have partnered with us, who have worked with us. We are also committed to partner and share our experiences and innovations. I also want to emphasize that collaboration leads to mutual preparedness and protection of countries, its interests and its citizens. Because of global commerce, people become global citizens as they migrate, work, or travel outside their countries, and the fact that tsunamis travel across boundaries. Our protection is your protection is our protection. Let us continue to work together to make countries and communities to be tsunami ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Sorido, for sharing these experiences with us. We are now honored to have with us an esteemed representative of one of the most active countries in supporting the disaster risk reduction agenda. It's my great pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Jon Eström Grönhonal, Ambassador of Sweden in Thailand. Mr. Ambassador, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. Distinguished participants, a very good morning to you all. I have to say I'm grateful for this opportunity to listen and learn from all experts, and it's truly a pleasure to join you today and being able to offer some remarks at this commemoration of the World Tsunami Awareness Day. I would like to thank the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNESCO, UNDP, and UNESCAP for the invitation to speak at today's event. And Sweden is indeed proud to be a continuing partner to all of you. In the time allotted today, I would like to share some thoughts on one specific aspect of disasters, namely gender. Let us focus a moment on why gender equality and a human rights-based approach are of fundamental importance if we are to achieve resiliency and inclusivity in the planning for and management of disasters. They are never only natural events. Disaster occurs at the intersection of powerful natural and social forces and patterns. A tsunami that strikes the coastal lowlands may cause flood and erosion that results in great loss of life. At the same time, it is much more than the size and force of the waves that determines the degree of catastrophe. Our human choices and historical patterns are deeply implicated in how disasters develop. Historical land use and resettlement patterns, choices by individuals, governments, and companies about where and how to build houses, roads, and other infrastructures, decisions about where to install warning systems and the accessibility of the technologies that are deployed. All of these play a role in the ways disasters unfold. Beyond infrastructures and technologies, there are other social forces and patterns that fundamentally influence the course of disasters. Some of these are surprisingly often overlooked by agencies, decision makers, and leaders. Here I am thinking in particular of the patterns of social exclusion and inclusion that affect where disaster is most deeply experienced. The Stockholm Environment Institute and UNWOMEN's recent review of gender responsiveness and disability inclusion in disaster risk reduction in Asia and the Pacific highlights just this point with respect to gender and disability. The importance of gender is a case in point. We cannot help but see the critical importance of gender when greater numbers of women are killed by disasters than men. The tsunami of December 2004 killed people in many countries, and there was a strong gendered impact. In some of the affected countries, there were 4 times, I repeat, 4 times more women killed than men. This gendered disaster continued in the emergency camps and resettlement sites, where women experienced much increased rates of gender-based violence. Because social relations are often destabilized by disasters, a gender equality perspective is crucial for understanding risks and vulnerabilities associated with power disparities and shifting gender roles. Put simply, a gender equal approach to disaster risk reduction saves lives, both in the short and long terms. Of course, vulnerability to disaster is too complex to be explained by just one factor. In addition to gender, other social factors include access to economic resources, ethnic, religious, and social identities, educational level, and political representation, as well as physical ability and age, to name only a few. We understand that the expression of these factors amongst individuals and groups put some people, both their lives and their well-being, at greater risk to the effects of disaster. It is already well known that inclusive approaches to disaster risk reduction saves lives. Nevertheless, across the world, we can find projects and programs on disaster that are weak in their integration of gender equality and rights-based approaches. Some may be gender or rights blind, others tend to target certain populations as being only vulnerable or helpless. Through Sweden's Regional Development Corporation, we aim to do better than this by integrating disaster risk reduction with inclusive and human rights-based approaches. Furthermore, we value the knowledge and wisdom of marginalized groups, and we work with partners who facilitate their active participation and their power and knowledge to shape their own futures. I would like to conclude my remarks by thanking you for this opportunity to share some of Sweden's learning and experiences from working with inclusive approaches to disaster. I would like to give special thanks to UNDRR, ESCAP, UNESCO, UNDP, and to all of our other partners in the region for their continuing efforts and for their contributions towards achieving inclusive, gender equal, and human rights-based disaster resilient development. Finally, I offer my sincere congratulations to the organizers of this World Tsunami Awareness Day event for creating an opportunity to learn from the experiences of so many agencies and organizations in the region. Your partners in Sweden look forward to working together and carrying forward this conversation during the days and years to come. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, and for reminding us again of the crucial role of vulnerability in the disaster equation. For UNDRR, it's always a pleasure to observe this important day, the commemoration of the World Tsunami Awareness Day. But we must say that this International Day and the important message that it carries would not have been possible without the advocacy of Japan, a country whose history has been intertwined with tsunamis and which has offered the world much guard against this deadly hazard. It's therefore my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Yuichi Oba, Minister and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Japanese Embassy in Thailand and Japan Permanent Representative to ESCAP. Mr. Oba, thank you for joining us today. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Ms. Mami Miztori, Assistant Secretary General and Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction. Ms. Amida Sarcia Al-Shabana, Executive Secretary of ESCAP, distinguished participants. Let me begin by expressing my sincere appreciation for this opportunity to join you in this very important event and speak of Japan's perspective on international cooperation to build regional resilience against tsunamis. This year marks the passing of 1 decade since the Great East Japan earthquake. Disaster prevention and mitigation measures are also becoming more important than ever, and Japan is striving to make the world more resilient by sharing its knowledge and experience. Japan has actively supported awareness-raising activities in many countries so that we can pass down lessons learned to the next generations. COVID-19 is threatening the lives, livelihoods, and dignity of people around the world. At the same time, countries are also compelled to face the hazards posed by a variety of natural disasters. Due to climate change, extreme weather events have intensified and become even more frequent. Earthquakes and tsunami can happen anytime and will not wait for the pandemic to pass. The current pandemic has reminded us of the need for better understanding of the compound and systemic nature of risk and for stronger governance and international cooperation to deal with it. From 2017, Japan has been implementing a program to support preparedness in tsunami-prone schools in the Asia Pacific through UNDP. To date, more than 150,000 students in 23 countries have participated in evacuation drills. In cooperation with UNDP and UNDRR, the program has developed advocacy videos and guidance for school administrators that list additional measures to be taken with regard to COVID-19 in tsunami evacuation planning. The third phase of the project currently underway will focus on strengthening pandemic and tsunami preparedness in schools and communities as students still remain out of school in many countries. Distinguished participants, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, adopted in 2015, stresses the enhancement of international cooperation to developing countries and importance of a multi-hazard approach, and sets out mainstreaming of DRR in all sectors. In this regard, the government of Japan is currently working with UNDP through a regional project, DX4 Resilience, to support acceleration of digital transformation for disaster risk reduction and resilience building in Sri Lanka, Nepal, the Philippines, and Indonesia in the Asia-Pacific region. Under this regional project, the Japanese private sector is collaborating with UNDP to identify potential digital solutions jointly with the respective governments and communities to address specific DRR needs of vulnerable groups and mitigate the exposure to systemic risks. In conclusion, Japan will continue to work with the United Nations and other stakeholders in the region to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic and to realize a post-pandemic era with a virtuous cycle of economic and environmental growth that is flexible and disaster resilient. We must do everything in our power to achieve the SDGs so that no one will be left behind. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oba. We are very grateful for your presence today. And with that, we have to come to the end of the event today. I would like to thank you and thank all the attendees and all our distinguished speakers for taking the time to join us in this commemorating day, and also for giving us extra minutes because of the importance of the topic and the interest of the topic. We hope that none of us will never need to face a tsunami, but please remember, if you feel the ground shake, head to higher ground. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a great day and a pleasant weekend.